Hi, good evening. Welcome. Hi, my name is Sherry Pascarella. I am the executive director of the church, and on behalf of our board of directors, our founders, April and Eric, our incredible team, which includes Samuel Havens and Sarah Cochran and Talina Mascali, I am and many other people, very, very pleased to welcome you here to the church this evening. How many people have been here before? Fantastic. Welcome. Thank you for coming back. We are continuing this evening our series called Knowledge Friday. And Knowledge Friday is when we invite in a community member to share with us their enormous knowledge and passionate insights of a particular topic or life experience. And we are extremely pleased this evening to present for our Knowledge Friday, Marit Molin. Marit is the founder and executive director of the Hamptons Community Outreach, as well as the Hamptons Art Camp. She is also a licensed social worker and a therapist. We are unbelievably grateful to Marit as a part of our community. The church hosts, in part, the Hamptons Art Camp and has done some collaborative events with the HCO. We are very indebted to the work that Marit does for our community. It's extremely moving. If you have never really understood the work of Hamptons Community Outreach, as you get to know it this evening, it will help you understand better the community itself of Sag Harbor and the East End and some of the challenges that face us. It's a particularly wonderful moment to think about the work of Marit and the Hamptons Community Outreach. We are on the eve of an election on Tuesday. We hope that you will vote. We hope that you will especially vote. I mean, I'm the director of a not-for-profit, so I can't say this, but I would like to call your attention to Proposition number 3. So if you'll turn your ballot over next week and do us a favor and be in support of affordable community housing. Thank you. Without any further remarks, thank you, Marit, for being with us, for sharing with us your passion, your dedication to community, and a tremendous amount of empathy and care that you provide within our community. Thank you, Marit.
Thank you for that lovely introduction.
Everyone in the planet struggles with something or other, but to live, there's a difference between struggling and unhealthy, unsafe, unsanitary, dangerous, faulty electricity, bad plumbing, if plumbing at all. It went from dark and hopeless to light and beauty, and the amount of work put into this house to make some people happy and healthy and safe and sanitary conditions, it's miraculous, beautiful, magnificent work, and I really barely have any words to describe the joy in my heart that the Hamptons Community Outreach has brought to this family. I have seen in the last 2-3 months this project, the progress of this project more than I have seen in my community in over 6 decades. And I can say that because that's how old I am.
So there are many preconceived notions about what life is like in the Hamptons. At Hamptons Community Outreach, we serve families every day that live in houses like the one on the right. Again, people hear the word Hamptons and they assume it's like this. But many of us know that there are children in the Hamptons who do not have enough food to eat. The picture on the right was taken when we delivered food to one of the buildings, many buildings we serve. The building is in Southampton Village. I moved with my husband and 2 children to the Hamptons in 2015. I, like many other people, had no idea about the poverty that exists out here. How do we get started? We started with an art camp. This little girl, the girl on the left, her name is Ashley. Maya is the girl on the right. She is now 15. She was about 8 years old when this picture was taken. Ashley was over at our house for a play date. And Maya and Ashley were sitting at the dining table drawing and doing arts and crafts. After about half an hour of drawing, our daughter Maya said, "Come on, Ashley, let's go do something else. Let's go outside." And she said, "No, I don't want to." So they kept drawing. After about another 20 minutes, Maya said again, "Come on, let's go to my room." And Ashley said, "No, I don't want to, because I don't have markers and paper in my house." And that's when it hit me. There are families in the Hamptons who choose between going to King Cullen to get a gallon of milk or going to Staples to get drawing paper. I later learned that Ashley and many other children in the Hamptons spend the summer in the back of their mom's or dad's car, waiting for them to be done cleaning houses, cutting grass, or cleaning pools. Or they're home alone, watching TV all day, very often without enough food to eat. These children inspired me to start Hamptons Art Camp. This past summer was our 5th summer of holding camp. We welcomed over 140 children, of which 40% were underserved and non-paying. And as you mentioned, for the past 2 years, we've had our camp here at the magnificent, the church, and that makes the camp even more special. Thank you. I want to tell you a story about Michael. Michael is one of our absolute most talented campers. Michael attended Hamptons Art Camp for 6 weeks this past summer, and because he attended camp, his mom was able to work. The first week of August, one morning, Michael comes to camp, and he tells Virva, one of our art teachers. Hi, Virva. He says to Virva, "My mom is not pleased with me." He holds up the drawing book and shows Virva. I had promised her that this book was going to last me for months because she can't afford to buy me a new one anytime soon. When Virva told me that story, HEO sprung into action. We made a post on our Instagram account, and the post said something like, "Looking for art supplies for a very talented young artist." About 3 days later, this happened. Michael is only one of the very many children that we help throughout the year. One of our goals at Hamptons Community Outreach is to help underserved children fulfill their full potential. That actually makes me hungry. I hope I'm not making you hungry. That looks very good. So in the winter of 2020, we could not fundraise for the camp because we didn't know that camp was going to happen that summer. So I reached out to the different communities in which I work as a social worker, and I told them, I can't fundraise for camp right now. How can we help? All of them said, we need food. I started a letter writing campaign, GoFundMe campaign. I asked my friends, family, neighbors, everybody to donate. I reached out to corporations and companies, government officials, town officials, politicians, golf clubs, tennis clubs, surf clubs, everybody. And I told them about that there were so many people in severe need during this time. At the end of the year, so at the end of 2020, we had delivered 6,500 cooked meals, 19,500 pounds of fresh produce, and groceries, that's the last photo, groceries to 250 families bi-monthly. At this point, we had morphed into Hamptons community outreach. We were more than an art camp. I also want to add that today we feed 400 individuals every week. When we were delivering food to different neighborhoods and struggling buildings, we learned about the different needs. One of these needs was mental health services. People will come up to us and say, we need marriage counseling, or my teenager is struggling with anxiety and/or depression, or I need substance abuse counseling. Can you help? So we added a mental health services program. Another need that we learned about was the need for academic support. Parents would come to us and say that their children were falling through the cracks at school, and could we help them? There was a single dad that reached out, and he said, my son is failing at school. I don't know how to help. I didn't even finish high school myself. Can you help? So we enrolled his son, Leo, in our tutoring program. And after 4 months in our tutoring program, this happened. This is a high honor roll acknowledgement letter from Mr. Zahn, the principal of Southampton High School, congratulating Leo. This is what happens when you believe in people and give them the support that they need. We also added a children's outreach program. We now teach children how to play tennis. We give them swimming lessons. Many of these children went in a pool for the first time this summer. We also offer writing lessons. They have access to sports that otherwise they would have no chance of accessing. We also deliver coats, winter coats, clothing, shoes, backpacks, toys, and many other things. Another thing we do is we throw a lot of parties. Easter parties, holiday parties, back-to-school parties, birthday parties. And we just had a fabulous Halloween party for 70 children. That photo over there shows some of the children that attended the party, and that's me kneeling down in a Princess Belle costume. So what we have learned from throwing parties, very often we invite, or we have, an ice cream truck come to our parties. And what the ice cream trucks have taught us is that many of our children are so used to seeing the ice cream truck pull up, but they don't get ice cream, because typically they don't have money on them. So the ice cream truck would pull up, and they would stand there, and they would watch. And they would say something like, "Aw, the ice cream truck is here." So we now tell the children, "Go ahead, place your order. It's for you, it's for free." Talking about the importance of having fun and being included in activities that other children in the Hamptons do during the summer, carnivals. We have learned that many families go to carnivals because it's for free. There is no entrance fee. But when they get to the carnival, they can't go on rides, they can't play games, and they can't get food because they don't have that extra money. Often, they walk around and they look for discarded or dropped wristbands or tickets. We fundraised this past summer and were able to take 75 children to different carnivals in the Hamptons. And they were able to do all of the things that they wanted to do. Another program that we added was medical services. There are lots of people in the Hamptons that walk around with medical issues. These are some of the people that we have helped. The girl top left is a girl she attends Southampton Elementary School. I got to know her a little bit through the food deliveries we do to different struggling buildings. And one day she came up to me and she said, "I don't like going to school anymore. Because when I get to school," I forgot to tell you, she had a growth on her forehead. And so she told me, "I don't like to go to school anymore because all the children point at my forehead and they said, 'What is that?' And I don't like to hear that question anymore. So I don't want to go to school." So this appointment was actually after it was a follow-up, a 2-week follow-up. So we fundraised and we provided the surgery, and I'm happy to tell you that she's no longer bullied at school. The top pictures 2 and 3 are of people we've provided for eyesight restoration surgeries. And then the bottom photo, 1 and 2, is of a woman named Isabel. Isabel is Guatemalan single mother. And the photo, bottom middle, was taken when she got, I'm sorry, to backtrack a little bit. So Isabel thought she was deaf. But it turns out she had hearing, she could hear on one ear, but she needed a hearing aid. So we fundraised for that one hearing aid because, again, she had complete lost hearing on the one ear, but the other ear she was a great candidate for a hearing aid. So we fundraised and we provided her with a hearing aid. And the bottom photo in the middle is the day when Isabel heard her son's voice for the first time. Bottom right, that's Julia. Julia attended school for 6 months without hearing. Her hearing aids broke, and her family could not afford to replace them. Luckily, one of our teachers started following us on Instagram and reached out and asked if we could help her. So we fundraised and were able to provide her with hearing aids. I wanted to include this slide because it exemplifies something that we are very proud of. This is Jose. Jose was fired from work because he was nearly blind. We fundraised and provided an eyesight restoration surgery that was successful. And he is wearing his large black glasses because his eyes were still healing at that point. But after he was healed, not only did he get a new job, but also he became a volunteer. And that photo shows Jose delivering produce and food to struggling buildings in Hampton Bays. Our goal is to turn all of our clients, all of the people that we help, into volunteers. And we get a lot of requests from people that we've helped who say, I now want to help other people in need. Another need that we learned about was home repairs. People would come to us and say, I don't have heat in my house, or my windows are broken, the doors are broken, or my ceiling is collapsing. Many people would come to us and say, I live with my children in a house full of black toxic mold, and my children are getting more sick every day. These are other examples of houses that we've renovated. The bottom two photos show the house of a Guatemalan grandmother who raises her grandchildren. She had repeatedly asked her landlord to fix her porch that was rotten. He refused. One day she fell through the porch and she got stuck and badly injured. Luckily, her neighbor had read about us in a newspaper article, and he reached out and asked, can you help my neighbor? So I wanted to show you a map of the Shinnecock Reservation. Obviously, the reservation is, the land in between the red lines. As you can see, it's surrounded by water, which leads to a lot of mold issues. As part of the home repair work that we do a lot of mold remediations on the Shinnecock Reservation. Some of them only need interior mold remediations. Some also need exterior mold prevention services. I don't know if anyone in here has had a mold remediation inside of their house, but if you have, you understand how much work it entails. You rip up the sheetrock, remove the insulation, you treat the mold, and then you have to restore and repair, rebuild everything that you have torn down. I want to mention that the Shinnecock Reservation is really mostly marshland and swampland, and there are many underwater springs, which is really the reason as to why there are just so many mold issues in their houses. I mentioned exterior mold prevention services, and this is one example of that. You excavate the land away from the house. We applied 4 layers of tar, and then you have to grade the land so that the water runs away from the house. Becky, I would love for you to come up and speak and talk about the needs of the Shinnecock people and why things are so difficult. Do you want to start? Yeah. Go ahead.
Becky? I'm going to introduce Becky Genia. She is an activist. She is a member of the Shinnecock Nation, and she is also a musician, part of the Thunderbird Sisters, who will be performing here at the church on November 26th. That would be Thanksgiving weekend, which is also a really interesting time to think about the role of Indigenous people in our community. So, Becky, please join us in conversation with Marit to have a... Following Marit and Becky's conversation and dialogue, we will have a Q&A in which you'll be invited to ask questions about the art camp, about HCO, and or about the work that the two of them are currently doing within the Shinnecock community. Thank you, ladies.
Thanks. So thank you for being so interested in this Knowledge Friday. I never heard of it before a couple days ago when Marit had said, can you hang with me tonight? And I said, sure. So, you know, the universe... Would you prefer to sit? No, I'm okay for a minute. I'm okay. Yeah, I'll let you know if I start collapsing. You know, the love and the mercy of the universe sent Marit and her angels to Shinnecock. Yes. And, you know, the great creator, you know, all of our struggles, every human being alive has struggles, and one thing or another. But, you know, with our indigenous history of Southampton and not being treated so well from June of 1640, you know, we have all along, you know, kept our people together as much as possible. We lost a lot of people due to the, you know, alcoholism and the fraudulent land deals and everything, and we were shoved onto the neck in 1859 when the railroad came through, and that's that map that you saw with our reservation, which is like 800 acres, and a couple hundred acres at least is swamp and marsh, and there's these streams that just, you know, go everywhere, and they do create a lot of mold issues. And a lot of people, you know, they kind of look down at Shinnecock, you know, oh, they're drunk and lazy, and they kind of categorize us where it's comfortable for people to look down their nose at, you know, this small group of first people who just managed to survive. Out of all the native people on Long Island, Shinnecock has our land base. The Unkachucks have a very tiny reservation up the island. The Montaukets, all their land was taken. There's some Matinnecocks and some Cutchogs and maybe some Setaukets, but there's not many of us left at all. So we have to hold on to our language, our culture, our tradition, our heritage. You know, this is our ancestral homeland, and we love our Shinnecock, but it's sinking. You know, climate change is affecting us all, and our Shinnecock too. So we're literally sinking, and I don't know where we're gonna go once we sink, but in the meantime, these houses are full of mold and mildew and swamp rats, and you know, I'm telling you, I could tell you horror stories, but well, I'll tell you one horror story. One of the girls, this is probably about 20 years ago, she came to us, and you know, Rainbow literally danced her way up and down this island to raise money 23 years ago for 4 of the worst houses on Shinnecock. We did that, and we neglected our own selves to help these, they were in dire straits beyond. One of the girls said, I can't live like this anymore, I will kill myself if I don't get some help with the housing. And unfortunately, the tribal dysfunction only addresses this much, and there's this much. So that's a nice way to put it. So she told us a story. She said, I need help. And I said, well, you know, my family will do whatever we can to help you. And she told us that she had went to sleep one night, and when she woke up, there were baby rats in her hair. And she said, I can't live like this anymore. I have 2 little boys now, and I don't want them to live like this. So I said, okay. And that's only one of many, many, many stories, because, domestic situations, a lot of times you're not allowed to talk about what is happening behind the closed doors. And sometimes Shinnecock is a big old closed door. And once you go beyond the gates of the reservation, you are expected to behave a certain way. So we're like, well, we can't live like that anymore. The women are suffering, the children are suffering, and there's just not enough help here. So that's been going on. That's what we were born into. So she was born into. And being called drunks and everything else. My oldest daughter is 49 years old, and my children have never seen me drunk, ever. So, and those little babies in those strollers, they're not drunks, but we get categorized, and we have a stigma going on over it. So we have to rise above that, because we have to row our canoe in 2 worlds. Your world, once we leave that reservation, and then behind the gates, literally West Gate, East Gate, Middle Gate. That's how we were shoved onto the reservation, behind those gates. And in 1859, when the sun went down and those Indians were behind that gate, it was a shoot-to-kill order on us. So all of that, we survived all this genocide, racism, insanity, corruption, land theft, everything. So, and everything's polluted, and now we're all trying to fix everything in a good way. And it's been, to watch the kids, I think that's the worst part of all, is watching these kids with their little hopeless selves. And I say kids because my grandson, it's 20, I think he turned 29 in August. He's 29. He's not my oldest. My oldest grandson is 31. He left for Guam 7 years ago and never came home. He's like, I am out of here. So we miss him, but all the rest of the kids are here, have 3 grown daughters, 10 grandchildren, and 8 great-grandchildren. And we love Shinnecock with our heart and soul, but it's rougher than rough. When she was, I always tell this crazy story, but when she was 3 months old, and we lived in a house that was like 150 years old or more, and it got passed down to us. Thank goodness, at least we had a roof over our heads, but it was freezing cold. She went to bed with her mittens on and her snowsuit on, and that's the way we lived. We had our wood stove. The electricity was horrible because it was one of the first houses on the reservation to have electricity, so it was these big coil things that ran through the walls, and if you did something the wrong way, you get a shock, and it was crazy. But on the reservation, there's no mortgages. We can't go to the bank and get a mortgage and, pick out a house, get, a good job and go to the bank and get a mortgage and pay off your mortgage, and that's not in the picture at all. There's no such thing. Our houses are worth 0 on the market value. They're worth nothing. So a lot of times people of the reservation, they'll, when they get married, they'll have a little shack, and then they'll just keep adding on. And sometimes that works, but every single house has a different story of how they built their house. And sometimes it works okay, and sometimes it doesn't. Because if you have 2 people who are trying to raise a family in a proper way, that's wonderful, and you might have something, going on safe and okay, but sometimes there is that element of there's only one person working hard and the other one isn't. So I grew up with a family. I used to love to visit them, but they had no plumbing. They had there was electricity in the kitchen and the living room there, and they had 10 kids, and the mom and the dad, and The oldest brother had gotten married, and he lived outside the back door in his station wagon with his 3 kids. And because we used to have to go outside the back door to pump the water to help the mom get the supper ready. And I don't care how many people were in that house or came to the house, there was always a plate of food for you. She was wonderful. But the dad had, he was just kind of there. And the bedrooms all had kerosene lamps and these heaters that just smelled like kerosene all the time in the winter. And then at the end of the hallway was what they called the honey bucket. And it was a disgusting place. You had to go to the bathroom, and then they used to fight. You take it out tonight. No, you take it out. No, you take. And you have to pick up the honey bucket and go down the pathway into this hole that they had dug in the backyard and dump out the honey bucket. And that's the way they lived. So, the housing stories go on and on and on. And after the mom passed away unexpectedly, the house really went downhill. Every single house has a story on that reservation. And unfortunately, when you try to make a decision on something, and this is part of the dysfunction, why things don't get repaired in a timely fashion or money doesn't get distributed in a proper manner, is it's just the way it is. If you had 200 siblings, how much could you accomplish? You'd probably be fighting more than that's how we are. We're just a huge family who have been thrown a situation, and you give people a certain amount of money and everybody fights over it. It's not always fun on Shinnecock. But we have to take care of ourselves, each other, and these children, and that's all there is to it, because they deserve a good life. I raised one of my grandsons. I've had him since the day he was born, because his mom wasn't doing good at all. And he's 20 years old now, but when he was little and we, had the only house we ever had, I noticed he couldn't breathe right. He was like 6 months old, and something was wrong. And so he's probably been on a nebulizer since probably 8 months old, something like, and he's 20 now. The mold and then I noticed when he started going to school, it would clear up. I was like, what is going? And the mold and the mildew was everywhere. Our house is like really low to the ground. And so when he went to school, he could breathe. As soon as 5 minutes off the school bus, he'd be, ugh. It was really, and so many houses are like that. But we're not allowed to tell anybody. We're not allowed to help anybody. We're not allowed, we just have to sit and wait for somebody. And it's so wrong. So again, when Hampton Community Outreach came into our lives, there's more hope than I have ever seen. And, I could go on and on forever, but I just want to say thank you to Marit and her angels. I love you all so much for helping us.
Thank you, Becky. Becky, do you want to join us? And do you want to join us for the Q&A, Becky?
Yeah.
Marit?
I'm sorry. I just want to add one thing.
Yeah.
So in about 18 months, we have renovated 22 houses on the Shinnecock Reservation. We are currently working on 4 houses, and we have 20 houses on the waiting list. So, yeah, lots of work to be done. Okay.
I'm going to lead a Q&A. I have some questions of my own. I have questions for both of you, actually, and then I'm going to open it up to everybody. Thank you both for sharing your knowledge and your insights and your experience with us tonight. My first question is actually for Becky, and then I have a more broad one for Marit. But Becky, one of the things I think that would be really helpful for us to understand a little bit better and to hear more about from your the benefit of your experience and knowledge is to understand the situation of mortgages on the reservation. And I think about this, there is an institution of racism that is infrastructural, right? Things like redlining, for example, or rezoning or redistricting that make it difficult for people to participate in what many of us, what white culture perceives as like a basic middle class advancement of life and lifestyle. So what exactly is the situation with mortgages on the reservation? Could you describe that for those of us who don't really know?
Well, there's no such thing.
What does that mean? Like you can't get a mortgage for a home loan or a home improvement on Shinnecock?
Exactly.
And why is that?
Because we own the land in common, and we cannot use the land as collateral, and our houses are worth nothing. And, you know, our land is like, they appraised it as, I don't know, billions of dollars, but it is owned in common, it's sovereign territory, and you cannot use it as collateral. So the banks, it's out.
So if you need a home
no such
repair and you don't have the cash, you don't have the option, even though you collectively have this multi-billion-dollar asset of this waterfront property in the Hamptons, you effectively have no collateral and nothing to secure a home loan against.
None, nothing.
Because it's recognized as a co-op effectively, and so you have no individual ownership on the property.
Right. So we cannot go to the bank and borrow any money, no, any substantial amount of money anyhow to, you know, to build a house. Everybody knows it costs lots and lots of money to build
Or even if you need a new
house.
roof.
Yes, that's for sure. So that's why I say whatever's in your pocket after you go to your job, and you know, the jobs aren't really that, the opportunities aren't that great around, and our educational levels, you know, haven't been that, talking about 50, 75 years or so. So there's not a whole lot of money, and a lot of times it's just like whatever you have in your pocket left over from your salary at the end of the week. You know, you hopefully buy some 2x4s, and you have to stay in somebody else's house usually until you can have maybe a couple of $1,000s to start here and start there. And that's a lot of the story on the reservation. I mean, we live within our means,
Right.
but our means aren't.
Right, they're capped. They're
much.
capped, yeah. And is it so? Also, clarification for all of us to really understand what's going on here, because it's a reservation and it's a settlement between the United States government and the Shinnecock Nation. There are certain social benefits and economic benefits that would typically be committed to community and villages that are not applicable in the case of Shinnecock, correct? Because it is not, because it is owned by the Shinnecock Nation and not by, for example, the state of New York.
People feel we should have our own things. They don't want to share their pot of money, Southampton Town. They say they do, but they don't. They don't want to share what they have because they feel that we should get our own. We should be independent and don't ask me for our stuff because you can get your own as your own entity, your own independent little nation over there. So sometimes that's a double-edged sword. We could work together, but it doesn't work like that. The town of Southampton really hasn't had that kind of history of being very cooperative. It's like, you're on your own, that's the way it is, and, you know, that's the way it is.
Yeah, that's difficult. Okay.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, really difficult. That's an understatement. It just impacts, you know, like your road infrastructure, your transportation infrastructure, garbage collection, things like that are all the more difficult without the support of the village. Yes.
Well, and the federal government, so we'd be come federally acknowledged for 12, 13 years, something like that. And the resources were supposed to be, you know, bigger and better or whatever, but there's money that comes in for roads programs, and everything on Shinnecock is kind of, it's a snail's pace usually, and if there's money, sometimes it gets a road fixed here or there, but there's so many potholes, and the roads aren't doing good at all. To me, it's a lack of, accountability. It's no different than any place else when there's, a lot to be desired, and you really have to, you have to fix things from the bottom up or the top down, however you want to say that. And, in the meantime, people are falling through the cracks.
Yeah.
And that's what, human beings live in these shanties that are making us sick. Now, if you go to the reservation, you'll see some nice houses. People do luck out. They have good jobs, and, maybe they're, I don't know, a police officer or something like that. So you'll see a couple of nice houses on the reservation. But for the most part, like I said, everybody has a different story. And if you knocked on every door, you get a different story of how their house is built, how they attain their house, and how they're struggling to put a roof on, put a porch on, put the plumbing in properly and everything. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for those answers. It's very illuminating and disparaging, and it seems like a challenge. It's glad that Marit and others are able to help work together to provide some sort of way forward. Marit, I have a couple of questions for you. I think that some of us are probably, I imagine many people are thinking what I am, which is like, Becky referred to you as an angel, and angels drop down from heaven. But where did you come from? Because it just seems like you showed up in the Hamptons in 2015 and decided to fix like everybody's problems. What's that? I mean, who doesn't? But I do want to know, like, can we know a little bit more, like, where did you come from? What was your background and your training? What were you doing before you came here that predisposed you to this enormous amount of sensitivity and empathy that you share with our community?
So I am born and raised in Sweden. I came to the U.S. Oh, louder, I'm so sorry. Born and raised in Sweden. I came to the U.S. first as an exchange student. I spent a year in York, Pennsylvania, through Rotary. The Rotary organization sponsored my exchange year. And after that, I went back to Sweden, and I finished high school. And then I moved to the U.S. because I had a really good experience during my exchange year. And I always thought I would move back to Sweden because I wanted, be with family and my close friends, childhood friends. But it didn't happen that way. I think a lot of times we think we make plans or we plan our lives, and then all of a sudden we find ourselves living somewhere very differently. But my husband, who's sitting over there, we met, and then all of a sudden I'm a mother of two, and I'm married, and I'm not going back to Sweden. And we lived in New York City, and life in New York City with a dog and two kids at different schools and different gender and activities, it was just very difficult. So we had been coming out to the Hamptons, and we absolutely adored it. And who doesn't? It's very beautiful out here. And so we decided to move out here full-time, and that was in 2015. And like I said, during my presentation, I just assumed that on the surface, everyone is doing well in the Hamptons. And then I really found out about the injustices in the Hamptons through play dates with children, like I told the story about Ashley. There was another little boy at my house, son of my friend, and I asked him a question. I said something like, are you looking forward to summer break? And he said, no, I hate it, because there's not enough food at home, and it's so boring. So hearing all of that, meeting these children and seeing the destinies really impacted me, and I started volunteering more and more and more. And then one day I woke up and I told my husband, you realize that I'm kind of a social worker without the social work training, and I need to go get a social work degree. And he said, yes, you do. And so I got a master's degree in advanced clinical social work from Columbia University. And and then started working. I worked at a Family Service League, which is a low-cost clinic out here, and I worked at a high school, worked with struggling teenagers or high schoolers. And sometimes people ask me the question, why do you do what you do? Let's see if I can tell you the story without crying. So, no, I don't think I can do this.
It's okay, Marit. I mean, share
Yeah.
what you want to. And also, it is, as somebody behind me just said, it is okay to cry. I cry all the time when I am forced to walk up here and talk.
Well, I feel the pain that struggling people feel.
Yeah.
And it makes my work very difficult because I meet with people, and Becky knows many of the people that I meet with. But we do not only do work on the reservation, but many other areas. But I feel the pain of the people that I meet, and I feel the suffering. And I cannot live with that pain without doing something about it.
Thank you, Marit. Any other questions? Constance, hi.
I have a question regarding the Shinnecock situation. I have friends who grew up on the Shinnecock Reservation, maybe 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, maybe a little bit more. And they became very successful in the fashion business and other entrepreneurial business. I know you know two of these families, I don't have to mention them. But my question is, has the situation disintegrated to such a degree that it's very difficult for a young teenager who wants to be a fashion designer or a fashion merchandiser or, establish a big herbal farm somewhere? Has it changed? Has it gotten worse since these scenarios that my friends enjoyed and experienced? If it's gotten worse, is there a particular reason why there's not I don't know if the word is motivation or opportunities or combination of both, and times have changed in America in general. So is there some element that contributed to the difficulty people have, young people have of getting their so-called dream careers? What's changed in 30 years?
It's
40
always
years?
been there. Nothing has changed. When you have your family that you knew and they had opportunities and they were able to thrive and be successful and everything, the house right next door to them had 7 children in it who didn't even have underwear,
Oh, I see.
filthy clothes, freezing cold, pumping water, different fathers, grandmother, mother, no man in sight. And that's only 2. That's the one who made it okay in the world, and the one that's only 2 out of all the people on the reservation. And that's why I said everyone has a story.
Well, that's a salient point, because both these families had strong patriarchal backgrounds and fathers and uncles and things. So that's the element that I was
Isn't that
looking for.
nice? Once in a while it will work out.
Yeah, but they did
Not
have these
enough.
strong fathers and uncles and grandfathers. So
Yeah, it's
that
domestic.
explains itself, yeah.
And when Marit had that screen on with the mental health, I mean, when you're coming out of a house that is freezing cold and full of children and no men except for the men who want to come in and rape your mother, and then they leave, and then you're left with all of these children with no food, no clothes, dirty everything, free and wood stoves. That one of the fellas used to tell us, when I get off that school bus and I smell the wood stove, and when I smell the smoke from the wood stove, I know it's going to be warm in the house. But when I get off that school bus and I don't smell that smoke, I know it's going to be freezing cold in my house. So when Marit was showing that one screen about mental health, it messes with your head. Depression, substance abuse, domestic violence, all this insanity inside this little,
Well, this is very surprising because neither of those people who grew up in those households that I told you about ever mentioned any deprivation or any problems on the reservation whatsoever. The way that they talked about it, I thought it was almost like, like a fairy tale of, people living together and thriving together and having this wonderful life together. They never, this is shocking to me, having known them for years.
Sure.
They never mention this.
That's part of domestic abuse, is you hide everything. Don't say a word. And that's how we grew up on the reservation. Women didn't get a voice in the tribe meetings until 1994. So when I was 11, 12 years old, I used to go into these tribe meetings because I was very curious. And I would sit in the back and listen to these men berate these women. And they weren't even allowed to defend themselves. And if a woman dared to stand up and say anything, she'd be called every name that you can imagine. Wow. And so you can imagine me, 11, 12 years old, sitting in the back of the room, listening to this insanity of a conversation. It was really horrible. And I know that the way I was raised, my grandfather was Chief Thunderbird. So him and his wife, they raised me and my brother. And there were like 7 of us in the house, my mom and their kids and everybody. So my grandfather was sober, and he was a wonderful individual. So a lot of things I was sheltered from till I was like 12, and I went into these tribe meetings, and I was like, what in the world is going on here? So you grow up real fast and furious on Shinnecock when you're questioning things. And there's a whole lot of people who like to put their head straight in the sand, and that's why we're in the situation we are today, because it wasn't a paradise. The land is beautiful, and it is a marsh and a swamp, but we can go out there and get, clams. Can't get scallops anymore because of the pollution from the runoff from the billionaires and the golf courses and the, pesticides and herbicides and all of that contamination. And that's another struggle we fight every single day. Land preservation, graves protection, that's what we live and breathe, is, protecting our sacred sites from the developers. And these crazy folks who just build and build and build and build with no, seem like they have no conscience at all, and could care less about the land or the earth, the culture, heritage, the wildlife, the traffic, anything. It's like, nope, don't care, just let me fill up my pockets and go to the next project. So, although Shinnecock could be a paradise, and if you come to the powwow, everybody's having a grand old time. Every once in a while, a fight will break out, and somebody go to jail. But for the most part, we put on our best performance for that weekend, and we get through it. And then the status quo, we go right back to,
Thank you.
Yeah.
We have another question.
You're like 5'2" and 70 pounds. So how did you walk in and make a difference in 20-something houses? Oh. So you're like 5'2" and, 70 pounds. And how did you walk in and make a difference in 20-something houses? And cut through the red tape and make a difference? And that's A. Okay, so B is, how many houses need to have a difference made? There's a couple of police officers or whatever that have done well in their life and their houses, good. But this is just I have hard-boiled egg eyes. Okay, I can't believe any of this. I'm so awakened tonight. Well, I just moved down here from Boston, so all this is a total new deal. But I mean, so A, how did you walk in and do what the hell you just did with all the red tape? And how many other houses need to be zippity-doodad? And C, how much does it take on the average to do a house?
Okay.
A, B, and C.
Okay. So start with question A. My daughter, when we lived in New York City, our daughter Maya, was a Girl Scout. And she absolutely adored it. So when we moved out to the Hamptons, I said, we're going to find you a Girl Scout troop, no worries. And it turns out there were a couple of troops, but she was too young or she was too old or something like that, and we couldn't find a troop for her to join. So I had promised her that she was going to join a troop, so I had no choice but to start a Girl Scout troop on my own. And so it was Maya and her classmates, and it was about 12 girls, and we ran the Girl Scout troop for about 3 years or 4 years, and then they started middle school, and they were way too cool for Girl Scouts. So we had invited a Shinnecock woman, Miss Autumn William Rose, and we invited her to the meeting to tell the girls about Shinnecock culture. And during this meeting, Miss Autumn said to me, there are moms on the reservation that would love to have a Girl Scout troop for their daughters. And she said, maybe you can help them. So we had an informational session where I sort of told them the steps and let's do it. And at the end of the meeting, they looked at me and she said, we have an idea. You should start a trip on the reservation. And I said, okay, let me think about it. And I thought about it and waited a little bit, and then I was inspired to start a Girl Scout troop on the reservation. And that's really how all of this started. So we had 11 girls. It was a combined troop. It was Daisy and Brownie and cadets, and we focused on girls' empowerment, leadership, and volunteerism. And I ran the troop for about 3 years, and then I asked 2 Shinnecock moms to take over the troop, which they did. During that time, as a Girl Scout leader, I got to know the families in the troop very well, and at the same time, I was starting the camp and I was starting HEO, and then they would hear about what I did, and then we did some work on the reservation. We did food deliveries during COVID. We delivered produce and meals to the elders. It was the 146 elders and special needs individuals every week. And so they got to know me, and then people started asking me for help because they saw that I was doing things. And that's really how I learned about the housing needs and the tutoring needs and all of those things. They would come to me and they said, hey, can you come to my house to see how I live? And I would walk in, and they would live with black toxic mold, like the walls, the ceilings. And what I said earlier, to go home with that. Like, I live in a very nice house, and it was painful to come home to my house, knowing that that is how they live. It's shameful. So I said to me one day, like I said earlier, I can't live knowing how they live, and so let's start doing something about it. And that is when I seriously started fundraising. Question 2.
So how did you walk in via the Girl Scouts? Okay, question 2 is how many houses haven't been done yet? Maybe we don't know, but you might know the number. And C is how much, this is an unfair question, how much does it take to bring a house back up?
Sure. Okay, so there are about 275 dwellings on the reservation. Becky, help me. I think about 120 of them are in need of help.
Yeah.
Some are in severe need of help, and those 22 in severe need of help are on our waiting list.
And the last question might be unfair, because one house might be, ready to fall over versus the other one needs a remediation. So how much ish does each house take, ish?
Sorry, I got distracted by this.
Yeah, it all depends. Right, it all depends on how what the project is.
We have done work. Some houses cost about $100,000. You start with a mold remediation, and like I mentioned, the mold remediation and then external mold prevention, and everything you need to do costs us $100,000. But keep in mind that many of the services that we get are donated. So maybe we paid $35,000 or $40,000 for that $100,000. We've had builders, we've had very generous builders who have taken on projects for us pro bono. Our budget is about, last year we raised about $630,000. And I have a couple of board members here, they could speak about how much money we really need to truly do all of the work that we want to do. But we would really like to raise $1 million to just fix all of the houses in need of help on the reservation. I don't know if I fully answered your question, but some houses are 5,000, some houses are 100,000, but we don't pay 100,000 because we ask for donated services.
Thank you. Those are great. I see you, Constance. I just want to see if somebody else has a question first, because I know that you asked. Yes, sir. We'll come back to you. Don't worry. Hi.
Marit, I was just going to invite you to share how you also work with restaurants during the COVID pivot, because I think that was a brilliant idea as well.
So this is Nick Gazzolo. He's HEO's treasurer, and I don't know that we would be where we are right now without Nick's help. So thank you, Nick. So at the beginning of COVID, we started going out to restaurants. And there were a lot of restaurants that were severely struggling, and they were afraid of having to close their doors. We all know who work in the restaurant kitchens. Some undocumented people from marginalized communities. And we did not want them to lose their jobs. So I started fundraising, and I purchased meals, identified restaurants that were struggling, and then I took the fundraised funds and I purchased meals from struggling restaurants so that they would not have to lay off their workers. And we were successful. Not a single restaurant that we employed, or I'm not aware of. I had a lot of phone calls after sort of the big storm of COVID was over, restaurant owners thanking me for really, pushing in money at a time when they were afraid of closing. Thank you.
That's great. Great cause. There is a lot of that actually. HCO does that. You barely tip the iceberg on. I mean, it's just incredible the breadth of what you were able to do, and it's effectively you and a small number of volunteers and your board. It's become such an expansive vision, and dealing with. You didn't even fully touch on the situation of homelessness and all the problematics there. In either case, I wanted to open up to other questions. I know Constance had one. Did anybody else? Or I want to come back to Constance right here.
I mean, we're all here to listen to what you're doing, and I guess some of us want to know if there's a hands-on way we can help. For instance, I've been flipping houses until last year, up Island and also in Manhattan before I moved here. Do you need people to help with the decorating or even just the painting? Obviously, you have contractors doing the heavy work, but is there any hands-on thing that we can do to get involved in that? Or do you need people? I mean, sometimes you have too many volunteers.
We always need people. As you walk out, if you're interested in volunteering, please leave your email address with us so we can put you on our newsletter and we can reach out to you. We are looking for, it's funny you said that, because we do, after we've done a house, we typically make a post on our Instagram account and we ask for donated furniture. Being in the Hamptons, we're lucky because there's so much wealth out here. And so sometimes we make a post and a interior decorator will respond and say, oh, well, I'm working on this beautiful house in Amagansett, and I just decorated the house 2 years ago, but the family's tired of the decor, and they want to donate it all. And so we show up with our trucks and trailers, and we take it, we take it. So then we do need help with decorating, because when we place that furniture in houses, we need to make beds, and sometimes we print photos of the family members and we frame them, we put it up on the wall so that the family come home and, it looks beautifully and it's warm and it's decorated. So yes to decoration. Another thing that we need help with is introductions. Do you know a builder, an electrician, a plumber, someone that can donate a service? We typically get very few free services because it is so expensive to live out here and everybody needs to make money. But do you know somebody that might give us a discount. Do you know somebody that has a family fund? Do you know someone that works at a corporation? Any introduction to anybody. A lot of companies have giving funds and giving programs. And some families, they make donations. And so introductions is another very good way. Even just sending an email to your sort of family and friends and network. Hi, I just learned about an organization in the Hamptons, and they do great work. I want you to, please go to their Instagram or please check out their website. You never know. We've gotten emails for, people like that and say, oh my God, I just found out about you. I'd like to make a donation or introduce you or something like that. So there are different ways. Another great way to learn about our work is to follow our Instagram account, because we do ask for things on Instagram all the time.
I have another question here, but I do want to say, one thing I will say as a passionate supporter of the work that you do, is that anybody can give money. You don't need to have an extra $1,000 to feel like you're making a difference. If you can afford $10, that will make a difference. Collectively, we can help each other. So, I know for many people, even $10 is out of reach, and that's okay. But I think that as somebody who also works and has a mandate of raising money, and has, on a volunteer basis, worked in the domain of housing advocacy, it really doesn't take a lot of money. If everybody in this room went home tonight and donated $10, somebody could get their roof fixed tomorrow in Shinnecock. Just throwing that out there. And there is a QR code and some pamphlets on your way out of the door to make that easy for you, should it seem like a challenge. I know. Thank you. Question?
Well, I think you might have answered it, but just, is there a main website or a way to understand when the need arises? If you finish a home and there's a need for the furniture to be donated, that's a timing thing too, right? You don't have a warehouse where you're just going to be able to take donations randomly, right?
A lot of people email us and they ask, I have this kind of item right now I'd like to donate, can you take it? HAO is very fortunate to have Chuck McWhinney, who's sitting over there with his lovely wife. He is a car connoisseur, and he has an 8-car garage, and he has very generously donated space in his garage. So sometimes I call him and say, hey, Chuck, can we take a Viking stove tonight? And he will very often say yes. And we also purchased a storage unit that's placed on the Shinnecock Reservation. So that storage unit is full with designer couches and stoves and fridges and all kinds of things. And so when we finish the house on the reservation, we pull things from the storage unit. So anybody should reach out at any time and ask us, hey, can you take this right now? I'm getting rid of X and Y. So on our website, which is hamptonscommunityoutreach.org, our email address is on there. It's info@hamptonscommunityoutreach.org.
Thank you,
Can I say
everybody.
one thing before
Please,
we
Becky.
leave for the night? First of all, I thank you all for listening and caring and being concerned. And another thing is, I'm allowed to say this because I'm from Shinnecock, and I've told people before, anyone, whoever wants to come to the reservation, I will take you by the hand and take you from each and every road, up and down each and every road, and explain or answer questions or whatever your concerns might be, and how people got this way or what's going on, or even how can we help from here on, because it's all about healing. And to me, when you're reaching above your comfort zone, and you're asking for help, you're looking for help, and you're receiving help in a good way, then to me, you are welcome to my reservation, and I will personally show you the reservation and what it's like living there.
Thank you so much. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, first, yes, Marit.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight.
Oh, sorry, Judy.
To 7:30. You can buy a ticket online on our website. We have a silent auction that I think we're going to be posting online before the event. And it's going to be a fun party, and it's a way to help the organization and even learn more and meet
Absolutely.
like-minded people.
Yeah.
No.
HamptonsCommunityOutreach.org.
Hamptons Community
It will be on
Outreach.
our website, but it is not there at this time.
Yeah.
So as you walk out, there's a small table over there, and we have the invitation for the Thunderbird Sisters concert. And HO is very, very grateful because Becky and her sisters are organizing a silent auction and a concert here at the church. So November 26th, we would love for you to come. Tickets are on sale at the
Tickets are on
churches.
sale now. Yeah, you can
Yeah.
go to our website.
Tickets are $25. Also on the table, we have the invitation for our holiday party, which is December 3rd, held here. We would love for everyone to attend. Anyone that's on Instagram, we'd love for you to follow us, Hamptons Community Outreach. As I said, I want to thank you so much for coming. I also want to thank the church. Everybody. I mean, you're just incredibly supportive. April, Eric, Talina, Kristen, you, everybody. So thank you.
Thank you.
Sam.
And Sarah.
I also have a shout out. Today is a very special day, not only because we're here at the church together, but today is Becky's birthday.
Oh, happy birthday, Becky.
And I would like to thank you for choosing to spend your birthday evening with us.
Yes, ditto. Good. Thank you so much.
So if you see her as you walk out, please give her a birthday holler.
Aw.
Also, we have something for you. Chuck, I'd love you to come.
Thank you. That's so sweet.
And we purchased a $200 gift card to La Parmigiana so that you can take Rainbow, your daughter, and any family member tonight for dinner. Thank you again.